Very good. So today I decided I'd do a little sutta reading instead of just normal Dhamma talk. There was this, I was listening Ajahn Brahm give a Dhamma talk last week, and he mentioned this sutta, that is one of his suttas he likes, so I thought I'd do that, this sutta he mentioned on that. And then if Sridhar, yes please. So there is two suttas which are very close to each other. So we have, these are from the numbered discourses, so Anguttara Nikaya. So we have 161 and, 5, 161 and 5, 162. So we have how to, and Ajahn, I'm using the Bhante Suchato's translation. Can you see it there? Yep, perfect. And these two suttas are very close to each other. There's just, first one is spoken by the Buddha, and the second one is spoken by the Sariputta? Yeah, I think it's Sariputta. We'll find out right later. First one is a bit shorter. It's a very nice, it's almost like the Buddha gives it, there's just so that this is how you get rid of resentment. Second one, the Sariputta gives nice similes to that. So I like to have both of them. It might be a bit too much, but let's try to do both of them this morning. Usually, quite often, teachers just take that, the second one, the 162, and then. But since the Buddha says that gives the first quite a nice one in this, the previous sutta here talks about the same thing, I decided I'd do the both. So resentment we all tend to have. I know all of us, we I know a lot of you personally quite well, and I know we have things in our life which causes resentment, divorce, not thinking you're not parent, which is you've been a successful parent, you have problems, your son or daughter have problems, you've been dumped, you had what else kind of resentment, you have resentment towards your parents, you have resentment, you're angry at your boss, your previous people who employed you, anybody, really could be anybody. There's a beautiful simile in Dhammapada in verses, in the first twin verses, it's somewhere there, perhaps number 13 or something, where the Buddha said, the verse goes something like this: he abused me, he hit me, there's a third one, it's something in the same line, he mistreated me. Those who harbor those kind of thoughts will never have peace. And then the twin verse, because it's on the first one, there's the twin verses, it has the same thing. He treated me, he hit me, he mistreated me. Those who do not, those who have, then he says the twin verse actually goes into that, the similar same, it's almost same, but it says by hatred it's never appeased by hatred. That's the twin verse, sorry. By non-hatred, he says, which sometimes is translated as a loving kindness, metta. By love, only by loving kindness, this hatred is appeased. So it's quite nice in that Dhammapada. Gives very like a short idea of just if you harbor those kind of thoughts, ill will, you will never come to peace. But if the only way to get rid of resentment or hatred is by love alone, by metta, we mean that's the word we usually use. But anyways, let's see what the Buddha says. Buddha and Sariputta go a bit more into details how to get resentment. And like I said, we all have all kind of resentments in our lives. Okay. Getting rid of resentment. Mendicants. A mendicant, meaning monks and nuns, should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen toward anyone. What 5? You should develop love for a person you resent. And if you see the word, we have Pali there as well. Yep. And hang on, what's it like? Love. There it says, Yasmin bhikkhave bukkalo agato jayate metta tasmin bukkale bhavitabba. So metta, bhavitabba meaning, you should develop. And so here the word again, the metta comes there. You should have metta, loving kindness. Bande Sujado has translated it as love. That's the first one. This is the best way. Sorry. This is the best way. You should always have loving kindness towards anybody you feel any kind of resentment. And when I'm teaching metta, I always remind people that we should start from ourselves. We have a lot of resentment towards ourselves, actually. And when you start meditating and being aware of what's happening in your own mind, you start seeing that there's actually a lot of resentment towards yourselves, towards ourselves, and that actually creates we create a lot of problems to ourselves. We have a lot of even not just negativity in mind, but that creates then ill health and all kind of things. So if you really truly can have metta towards yourself, it improves your health. And it makes you beautiful, actually. That's what Buddha said. So it's especially for anybody. If you want to look nice, good-looking, beautiful person, have a lot of metta. It's a good reason to develop metta. Anyways, so that's the first one. So you should have metta for a person you resent. That's how to get resentment for that person. That's the first way. Second way, you should develop a compassion for a person you resent. That's karuna. So we have these metta karuna here. So that's the second way. You have compassion, feel compassion. Look, this person is suffering. They were angry at me. You feel that they abused you. You should have like, oh, this person is still suffering. So you have compassion for that, karuna. Third one, you should develop equanimity, upekkha. This goes more into like, no, equanimity is just, you sort of like, equanimity is difficult feeling. We have to remember that this is not just like, you don't care. It does not mean equanimity. We never mean equanimity, upekkha, in this way. Equanimity is almost like, it's not indifference. It's a difficult concept, but you have to remember this is also a feeling, but it's not a feeling which is pushing away, like I don't care. Upekkha is an interesting feeling, and Ajahn Brahm these days translated sometimes upekkha like you are content. In this context, it's difficult to translate it as you're content with somebody who's you have resentment. But see how difficult it is sometimes to translate these words. So upekkha, equanimity is sort of, you don't get sucked into that. You just sort of like, that's fine. There's a resentment, but you don't get sucked into that feeling. You sort of have more even-headed with that. You're more level with that. Yeah, this is how it is. World is always, it gives us these ups and downs, and other people tend to try to abuse us. We have, or not even abuse, but there is resentment towards whatever it is, even to our own mind state. But have more distance to that. Have more equanimity. So this is the third one. And all the time we're sort of going into, it's first metta, it's quite difficult, and then you're going into these levels. Okay, fourth one. You should disregard a person you resent, paying no attention to them. See, this is, again, you can physically remove yourself from that relationship. If somebody's abusing you, if there's a lot of resentment, you try to get rid of that situation. And if you cannot, just have a little bit of mental distance to that. And that's why we meditate. That's how we learn how to have boundaries. Well, like, no, I need to take care of myself. I need distance from myself from that. And sometimes I feel people have resentment, and they want to have those feelings. They don't want to let them go because it makes them feel alive. It makes them, it becomes part of you, and you just keep carrying these things since early on, since childhood perhaps into your adulthood, and you just have this resentment, and it has become so integrated that it becomes you. We have to learn to not pay attention to that. But in this case, actually, it says you disregard that person. It's like, okay, you physically have distance, you don't pay attention to that person. This goes to another level from upekkha. That was the fourth one. You should apply the concept that we are all owners of our deeds to that person. And the word here, the Pali word, you can see there's a jayata kamma sakata. So that's that we are all owners of our deeds. That's our kamma. So whatever you do, you are owner of your kamma. So if you abuse somebody, the person you abused gets angry, they have resentment, but you actually, the abuser, you have to carry that kamma. And what follows from us from life to life, it's not really, you cannot say there's a self there, but the Buddha said you inherit your kamma. The kamma follows you wherever you go. There's no inherently self. In Buddhism, that's what we teach. There's anatta. There is no self anywhere in our will, or our body doesn't belong to us. Different mind state doesn't belong to us. The suffering, whether it's suffering or happiness, that doesn't belong to us. The kamma is almost only thing what belongs to us. So you are owner of that kamma. It's interesting, it says owner of our deeds, owner of our kamma. So you should apply the concept that we are owners of the kamma. This venerable, meaning this monk or nun, is the owner of their deeds, heir to their deeds. Deeds are their womb, their relative, and their refuge. They shall be the heir of whatever deeds they do, whatever good or bad. That's how you get rid of that resentment for that person. So this is how you can apply to that as well. You see that somebody's abusing you, you just create a lot of resentment. They have to bear that. They have their owner of that. The deeds are their womb. They take it for the next life. That's their relative and refuge. That really they have to have the consequences. So so take that. And then if that doesn't work, it doesn't say here. This is the fifth one. If that doesn't work, sometimes we teach maranasati. We teach death contemplation. That's the ultimate step. Like it still doesn't realize. Like, yeah, I know they're gonna, but just thinking that this person is also gonna die. So that's the maranasati. That's it's not here, but it's sometimes we teach that. It's like somebody really cannot think anything kind, or nothing works. You definitely cannot have loving kindness or equanimity to that person. So it's like, yeah, this person is also going to die. But that comes into this kamma. Buddha doesn't say that. But so these are the 5 ways how to get rid of resentment for a person. So mendicants should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen towards anyone. So these are the Buddha's very short way of looking into how to get rid of. And then we go into the next sutta, and which is Sariputta sort of almost continues on this. Somebody goes and asks Sariputta how to get rid of resentment. And then the Sariputta addressed the Sangha this way. The Venerable Sariputta addressed the mendicants. Reverend monks and nuns, avuso. It's interesting they use avuso. So you see the avuso there? It means a friend. These days, monks, we don't, unless either that Sariputta was most senior of all the monks here in this assembly. That's why he would have said avuso instead of Bantes. But in those days, time of the Buddha, monks actually call themselves friends, each other. These days we don't do that because when Buddha was saying that Buddha was dying, he said that, okay, I'm going to die now. You should address each other as the senior monks. You can call the other monks avuso, friend, but all the junior ones you should call the other monks. You should call them bante. So that's why it's still respectful for us to call the senior ones bantes, but all the monks we call each other bantes are being called Ajahn these days, but it just means a teacher. But so it's interesting. That's why I like to read, to have the Pali there. It's just I always get stuck in these things, but I love to have Pali there while we're reading it. Okay, but again, then they said avuso, bhikkhu ayasmato sariputta. So they said even the other monks called Sariputta avuso, and Sariputta might have been. So it's interesting. Again, the other monks called Sariputta friend, but Ajahn Pante Suchado has translated as reverend. But it just means friend, actually, avuso. Reverend, they replied. Sariputta said this. Venerable, a mendicant should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when he has risen towards anyone. What 5? So you would think Sariputta says exactly the same thing at Buddha. No, but Sariputta gives nice symbols here. In the case of a person whose behavior by the way of body is impure, but whose behavior by way of speech is pure, you should get rid of resentment for that kind of person. So if their bodily behavior is impure, meaning it almost this implies that they bumped into you, they physically hurt you, but their speech is pure, you should just look into their bodily behavior. I think this can, let's keep reading a little bit further, and then there's all these different cases here. In the case of a person whose behavior by way of speech is impure, but whose behavior by way of body is pure. In the case of a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is impure, but who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. In the case of a person whose behavior by the way of body and speech is impure, but who doesn't get openness and clarity of heart from time to time. In a case whose behavior by body and speech is pure, but who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time, you should get rid of resentment for that kind of person. So what the Sariputta is saying, that what we should do is concentrate on the goodness of that heart, goodness of that person. So he gives all these different ways of looking a person, and the similes come later. So you looked on the good side, goodness of that person. Their bodily behavior might not be very good, but sometimes they say something nice. They have good speech. Okay, speech might be that good, but the way they behave by body is good, so you concentrate on that. Their body and speech is not good, but sometimes, once in a while, they have an openness of the heart. They seem to be presenting, let me see, so this is interesting. So once in a while, the clarity of heart, so sometimes they get almost in this place, they get almost good meditation. They have calmness of the heart, clarity of the heart, what it says there. So they seem to be getting almost good meditation sometimes. You could reflect on that. Sometimes they seem to be very clear. I don't know how that would be on your colleagues who annoyed you and they don't seem to be having clarity of heart. But they seem to be very clear-headed. At least they're doing their work well. So they have clarity of mind and our heart, actually says here. openness, clarity, or heart. In the case of, what's the difference? Let's see the last one here. In the case of a person's behavior by way of body, speech is pure. Oh, okay. And who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. You should get rid of resentment for that kind of person. And it's actually true that it's most of the time people try to have good bodily behavior, could speak well. And this is sort of like, and one thing as well we have to remember as a Buddhist, perhaps we should try to lean ourselves into this one so other people can look us kindly. So if they have all of these three, you should concentrate on those things, and you should that's how you get resentment for that person. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of body is impure, but whose behavior by way of speech is pure? Did I read this already? Okay, so let's just continue with this. But whose behavior way of speech is pure. So bodily behavior, speech is okay, here we go into the similes. Oh, right. Okay, now it's good. Now we go into the similes. So if somebody's bodily behavior is impure, but the way of speech is pure, and then the Sariputta gives here the simile. Suppose a mendicant wearing rag robes, these are supposed to be rag robes, sees a rag by the side of the road. They'd hold it down with the left foot, spread it out with the right foot, tear it out what was intact, and take it away with them. In the same way, at that time you should ignore that person's impure behavior by the way of body and focus on the pure behavior by the way of speech. That's how to get rid of resentment for that person. So the time of the Buddha, quite often all the monks and nuns, here says bhikkhu pangsakuliko, and you might not know that word, but pangsakula is a rag robe. And when we do funerals, Buddhist funerals, we sometimes we put on top of the coffin this little cloth, and we call it pangsakula cloth. Pangsakula is rag robe, and that's the last offering for the monks, for the Sangha rather, that the deceased person, that rag robe belonged to the deceased person for a while, and that's the last offering, the pangsakula, that deceased person is actually giving for the Sangha. We do the chanting, and then we take the pangsakula. And those are the robes, so those are the rags what we made our robes, used to make our robes, and we still have these. These are called, in the monks' robes, these have like little strips, we call the kusis. So we can incorporate all of those rags, whether we find them on the roadside or funeral pyre, we incorporate, makes our robes out of them. And we still try to keep the tradition going, so these robes are still made out of pieces. So you concentrate, like I said, now concentrate on the pure behavior of that person. You take that bad piece off from that rag, and you take that pure, nice piece from that person, and you concentrate on that one. And it could be also your own mind, your own behavior. So you ignore that person's impure behavior, the way of body, and focus on the pure behavior, the way of speech. Maybe this could be applied. Sometimes I see people who have drug problems, drug abuse. The bodily behavior is quite coarse, but you can still see that they are mentally they're suffering, and there's goodness in that person, and they say kind person, and because they suffered so much themselves. I know I've taught in prison, and I have good friends who have problems like that. They actually are very caring people quite often. They suffered a lot in their life, but they just cannot break the cycle of the drug abuse. So their bodily behavior is quite coarse in some ways, if you would see it as an outsider. but actually they say kind words quite often, and they mean it. But the addiction is so strong. So you concentrate on the goodness of that person, on the pure good speech. So there was the simile of the rag rope. Then the next one. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of speech is impure, but whose behavior by way of body is pure? Suppose there was a lotus pond covered with moss and aquatic plants. Then along comes a person struggling in the oppressive heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. They'd plunge into lotus pond, sweep apart the moss and aquatic plants, drink from their cupped hands, and be on their way. In the same way, at that time, you should ignore that person's impure behavior by a way of speech and focus on their pure behavior on the way of body. That's how you get rid of resentment for that person. So what would be impure behavior by speech and focus? And then, like we all tend to say things a bit too hastily quite often, and without having a really even mean it sometimes. We tend to not care. Speech is something which is actually, I think quite often ignored how much damage we can do by speech. It's actually, as a monk, it's a one thing we put a lot of effort into having a kind speech in the monastery. That's a one thing which keeps the harmony, and the harmony is very important within the Sangha. Speech is, you can do a lot of damage really quickly without even meaning. So silence is almost golden, as they sometimes do. You hear say, and that's why when we do retreats, we have noble silence. It doesn't mean noble silence doesn't mean we absolutely don't say anything, but noble silence means we just say right time, the right words, meaningfully. And if you don't have anything to improve into the silence, there's nothing you need to say. So that's, if there's something to be said, well, then you can say it. But that's because you need to improve on the silence. You say, can I help you with this? That's, then you're keeping the noble silence. Noble silence is just you're always silent, absolutely. So, but again, think of a person who, that's an interesting simile here, that this person is struggling with the oppressive heat, and they're thirsty, and they plunge into the lotus pond. In the same way you feel when there's a release, like, when you concentrate on somebody's person's behavior is impure, it almost leaves you also as well refreshed when you don't carry that resentment. Okay, that's how you get rid of the resentment. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by the way of body and speech is impure, but who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time? Suppose there was a little water in a cow's hoof prints. Then along comes a person struggling with oppressive heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. They might think, this little bit of water is in the cow's hoof print. If I drink it with my cupped hands or a bowl, I'll stir it up and disturb it, making it undrinkable. Why don't I get down on all fours and drink it up like a cow, then be on my way? So that's what they do. In the same way, at the time, you should ignore that person's impure behavior by the way of speech and body, and focus on the fact that they get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. That's how you should get rid of resentment for that person. And this is interesting, this the cow's hoof print. you can imagine this like there's almost like hardly anything good in this person. But there's always something you can focus on. And it's very easy to mud the water, the clear water. But you have to be very carefully getting down on your all fours and just sip it from that cow's hoof print, the water from that. There's always, if you concentrate on a little bit of goodness on every person, you can find it. Don't muddy up the water. You have to be humble yourself as well sometimes. Get on all your fours onto the ground and just drink that little bit of clear water from that because you need it. You are a thirsty person yourself if you haven't get rid of the resentment for the other person. You can have resentment, you can have for anybody. People used to have resentment towards the Buddha. You can have resentment for your beautiful grandmother who always took care of you. There's always something like she wasn't, whatever it is. We have a resentment towards ourselves. So we try to find the goodness, kindness, the openness of the heart. Once in a while, there's that clarity. And we concentrate on that one. So I like that little bit of this simile of the little bit of water and the cow's hoof print. By the way, I don't know if you're interested, but the cow is here, the kopaka. How should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by the way of body, speech is impure, and who doesn't get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time? Oh, okay, this is difficult. This is the last one. I think this last one. It's just like this person is like completely bad, or you really don't like them. Suppose a person was traveling along the road and they were sick, suffering, gravely ill, and it was a long way to a village, whether ahead or behind. And they didn't have any suitable food or medicine or competent care or someone to bring them within the village. Then another person traveling along the road sees them and thinks of them with nothing but compassion, kindness and sympathy. So we have the... hang on, that's interesting. Okay, so we have karuna, adudameya, upateya, anukampa. That's a sympathy. Okay. So they use a little bit different words here. So have a compassion, kindness and sympathy towards those. Oh, may this person get suitable food and medicine, or competent care, or someone to bring them within the village. Why is that? So that they don't come to ruin right here. In the same way, at that time, you should ignore that person's impure behavior by the way of speech, body, and the fact that they don't get openness and clarity of heart from time to time, and think of them with nothing but compassion, kindness, and sympathy. Oh, may this person give up bad conduct by the way of body, speech, and mind, and develop good conduct by the way of body, speech, and mind. Why is that? So that when the body breaks up after death, they're not born into a place of loss, a bad place, an underworld, hell. That's how you get rid of resentment for that person. So this is almost going even, you're just really digging in deep. This is almost like now you see that, like I said earlier, that then maranasati, that death contemplation sometimes towards others. We are all suffering. We all, they were, let me see what they had. They were sick. They didn't have anybody to guide them. And they were, bring them into the village. There was you can really see that these people are lost. And the Buddha said actually of hatred, he said, somebody who's got a hatred in their heart, it's almost like they're sick. They're a crazy person, the Buddha said, of somebody who's got anger, ill will. You can think of this person who's got hatred. They're crazy. They're absolute. That's a crazy behavior. So you think of them like they really have have kindness and sympathy for them. That's how it's one way of getting resentment, getting rid of resentment for these people, a person, maybe even for your own mind states, where you says, yeah, they really are suffering. They are in the desert, lost. So, because if you do care somebody, it's interesting. Quite often we think somebody who's abused us, or we have resentment towards person, that if we just ignore them, that's almost like the first reaction for a lot of us has that kind of thing. If we don't care about them, they will never sort of come to clarity. They don't have the openness of the heart. They always themselves carry that around everywhere. But it's also for us, we actually carry that around everywhere. So it means that we are trying to get rid of our own resentment, because then we have to carry that in. It's a big burden sometimes. So this now talks about a little bit of the kamma. And kaya sabheda barang maranang. Okay, it doesn't say anywhere the kamma, but then it says here, and then it says after the body breaks up, meaning death. And then they have to, wherever that kamma takes. It could be that they are not, hopefully this person, because of they've done all these bad deeds, I just hope they're not going to get born in a place of loss, and in a place of even hell. So in Buddhism, yeah, sometimes we say hell. They do, all these different places exist. Do we have heaven and hell? Ajahn Brahm has an interesting way of saying about the hell, is that hell is something you condemn yourself into after death. None of these places are nothing but your own mind states. You condemn yourself into a hell. Hell is not a place which is you inherently need to go. No, you want to go there. So if you feel you need to punish yourself, that's almost like a hell within Earth already, and that the same thing happens after the death. You yourself feel that you need to go to a place. So if your mind is very pure, like we have these Brahma Viharas, these higher abodes, Metta, Karuna, Upekkha, Mudita. If you feel like you lived a good life, you had a lot of loving kindness in your heart, the rebirth process will take you automatically to that destination. You feel like there's a kindness in your heart, and so you have a good rebirth. But in this one, this goes into you feel compassion towards this person, that wow, their karma is quite heavy because they are abusing others, or in this case they abused you. Okay, how should you get rid of resentment for a person whose behavior by way of body and speech is pure, and who gets an openness and clarity of heart from time to time? This is actually quite a good person. Suppose there was a lotus pond with a clear, sweet, cool water, clean with smooth banks, delightful and shaded by many trees. Then along comes a person struggling within the oppressive heat, weary, thirsty and parched. They'd plunge into that lotus pond and bathe and drink. And after emerging, they'd sit or lie down right there and in the shade of the tree. In the same way, at the time, you should focus on that person's pure behavior by the body by the way of body and speech, and the fact that they get an openness and clarity of heart from time to time. That's how you get resentment for that person. Relying on a person who is impressive all around, the mind becomes confident. A mendicant, you should use these 5 methods to completely get rid of resentment when it has arisen towards anyone. Okay, that's interesting. So we can. It's quite interesting when you meditate enough and you have enough mindfulness. We can actually start seeing our own minds more clearly, and that's one of the reasons why we meditate. We meditate to get rid of things. We don't obviously try to have amass more things. We don't have these attainments when we meditate. But it's interesting when you meditate, you start seeing how your own mind works. And you see how you have resentment in your own mind. The mind tends to be very petty quite often. And at least my mind tends to be like that. And I've heard other people who have that. You start seeing that, I'm not sure I like my mind so much sometimes. So you start seeing that even for a person who seems to be having a good behavior by body, speech, and mind in openness of clarity of the heart, we can still have resentment even towards that kind of person. And the same way, in this way, the Buddha would have been very, in those times, the perfect person who was perfect body, speech, and a lot of openness and clarity of the heart. But still, people felt resentment for the Buddha and Sariputta and Ajahn Brahm and Mudito and your dear grandmother and anybody. We can still have resentment for anybody in this when we spend enough time with them. And your own mind states, and all of those things. But you can think of that as I hope this person. It's almost like it's easy to get rid of resentment for this person. It's in this simile where there was that they came down to. You just hope that. I hope they keep continuing on this, they're doing well, and they have more goodness on their way. This is almost like a little bit of like you wish more mudita, more happiness for this person. Because they already have all these good things, but you still had resentment towards that. But you still, you create idea that may they even get more happiness, this kind of plunging into the cool water with the sweet lilies there, and he can have a drink and rest on the shades of the trees. That you can imagine why, like, oh, I wish this person will still do even better and to continue doing well. May they have good health and all that. May they get rid of anything bodily sickness. If they have sicknesses and other sufferings in their life, so that's how you cultivate goodness. This is almost like cultivating mudita, that kind of you seeing somebody doing well, and you get happiness out of that. It's almost like that, and that's how you get rid of resentment for that kind of person, and that's almost like the easiest way. I forgot there was this interesting thing at the end, actually. That's how relying on a person who's impressive all around, the mind becomes confident. Samanta passadikang avuso bukkalang agamma chittam pasidati. Okay. I don't know why that little last little thing is there at the end, where the Sariputta doesn't just end the sutta here, but it's an interesting passage there, actually. This talks about the Buddha or somebody like we say that we have like a good friend in Buddhism. We have all these spiritual friend idea of good. Somebody's going to help you. If you see you have confidence on somebody, and that's if you rely on that kind of person, that you pasidati chittam pasidati. Let me see what that word. Oh, it doesn't give me the. So confidence. That's a really nice, and you can see that if you, for me obviously it's having lived with Ajahn Brahm so long that it's if I have a lot of confidence in him, or I can rely on him, and because of that the mind becomes confident, and the confident mind, then it's a calm mind. Happy mind creates calm mind. Calm mind is mind which is joyous. Joyous mind becomes even more calm. And for that, obviously, you go into the nimittas and jhanas, and then that creates enlightenment. So, happy mind is a calm mind. So, it's these two suttas. I like them. They're very nice. These are all of these things. And so, once in a while, we have to have something to reflect. Buddhism, that's one thing which is you have to develop. It's not an automatic path where you go do dana, you don't have to do any work. No, there is work to be done. We all have resentment. They come once in a while, more stronger. Once in a while it's not as strong. There's little things in your mind, but you concentrate the goodness of your own heart, the goodness on others. Once in a while you have to be humble. You drink from the cow's hoof print, and then just concentrate on that tiny little goodness you have, that the others have, and by this, you have a mind which can easily let go. All of these things are aiming for you to have a mind which is calmer mind. By calm mind, I mean you can easily meditate. You can easily leave the world behind. All of these things, they tend to drag you down. They tend to keep you in this world. If you don't yourself, you don't have openness of the heart. So until you have that, until then we have to keep practicing. Okay, looks like I'm getting out of time, so I end it there and I get the questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Please, if anybody has any resentments towards me, they can come and speak. Have questions or comments. Or who's the bravest one there? So we can have online questions, and then if there's anybody, if something comes to your mind, please feel free and don't feel anxious about asking questions. So let's start with, because it doesn't look like anybody
Ajahn,
here.
there hasn't been anything that's come from online as yet.
Okay.
But there is someone who's a fellow Finn from Argentina who said hello.
Okay, right, great. Moi. Right. It's sometimes, this your mind is sort of, there's nothing to say. You understand it's a nice sutta, and it's inspiring, isn't it? These kind of suttas, they're quite nice, and so that's why I thought it was nice to read this sutta. And it's very practical. It reminds you what we should be doing, how do we progress on the path. Reminds you of the things like the kamma, that we are. That's something we inherit. We inherit the kamma. You would inherit your deeds. That's what takes you from place to place. Nobody can escape from those. So there's a lot of things in this kind of suttas. So it's sometimes easy to just glance over and not think about it. But it's another thing which is sort of like there's a lot of mindfully, actively we have to do things in life, and this is one of them. And it brings the clarity of mind, hopefully. Somebody could start, just ask any question, and then the others will follow. We usually have to break the ice. Dr. Jaya, please. Okay, well, there's two. We always have to. No, you asked now, and so you just happen to be the lucky first.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Anything, yeah. How much is 2 plus 2? And like,
Good morning, Ajahn.
good morning.
Thanks for coming here and giving your Dhamma talk today.
Yeah.
Since nobody was asking a question, and I always have questions,
Yeah.
so I thought of why not pass the time asking a question then?
Yeah, no, it's good because we all learn from those things.
Yeah. So, okay, so asking a question. Maybe a stupid question to ask, but tell me, Ajahn, how, okay, when we consider people like monastics, monks and nuns, who have basically said that, okay, they are renouncing samsara and basically they are taking the Eightfold Path, which the Buddha said. So, keeping aside them, like keeping aside people like you, if we consider lay people like, I think, except you, everybody else, including me here. So, considering the lay people, basically, who have basically families and who have to work also. Okay, so how should I ask? It's a stupid question, but still asking. I think I can't say about others. Maybe people are much advanced in their practice, and I'm not even started properly in my path, I think. So maybe people are more advanced, so I can't say about them. But I can say about myself. I will not exaggerate, but what to say? I am coming from a Hindu family, and I have started studying Buddha Dharma for, I think, for some years now. I'm not sure how many years, but still I think around 8 to 9 years maybe. Mm-hmm. Heard a lot of teachings, basically something like, can say that have a theoretical understanding of all the three vehicles like Theravada, Mahayana and Vajrayana. Theoretically, at least I can say that. Yeah. Maybe I'm boosting myself as an ego or a pride or a proud type of thing. Maybe that is the case. My ego is saying that I should say that I theoretically understand all the three vehicles of Buddhism. So, and theoretically, okay, I understand that Theravada, Mahayana and Vajrayana all say that ultimately, in the ultimate reality, there is basically nothing. And we have to realize that particular aspect. Intellectually thinking about it is not going to help it.
Nothingness, okay.
So the question is, I have been hearing these Dhamma talks for some years now, but, and the idea of impermanence is basically at the base, I think, of the spiritual practice. Then the question is, why can't the concept of that I'm going to die doesn't sink inside me? I have been hearing it for the last many years, but still,
there's nothing.
I don't feel like that I'm going to die or something. So how can we increase the feeling inside us that, okay, we are going to die?
Yeah.
As a lay person, working in
well, sure, I understand. Yeah. Let me, okay, so, sure. Let's keep it there. So we have the questions, like how, we have the question now, so I'll try to answer that. So how do you get that kind of like the feeling of, yes, me too, I'm going to die? How would really...
It doesn't sink in.
It doesn't sink in. How would that stir up? Well, it's again, you had the same question about a few weeks ago, metta. Like you said, and it's another question which gets asked a lot. Yeah, you teach about metta all the time, but I don't feel it.
Yeah.
And it's a very common question. This maybe doesn't come so often, this, the death, you don't feel it, it doesn't really register. The way I would do it is, you have to have, so we have this maranasati, like I said earlier. We have the contemplation of death. You once in a while contemplate, what am I doing with life? Is the point of where basically you're running towards your grave, and so am I doing the right thing at the moment? It can give you this kind of like, because there's an end point to all of this. It almost, you don't have to think about, it's not like it's sadness. It doesn't have to bring those kind of ideas. It actually it should bring you a joy. I'm doing the right thing. At least I'm trying to improve my mind. You come here, you give an ear, you listen to the suttas, you ask questions, very important thing. Ask questions from who you think they can give you good answers. You read the suttas as the best of your abilities, or you listen, monks and nuns. That you should actually, the maranasati, the awareness of the death, that you should be then, wow, at least I'm trying to improve my own mind, that I'm not wasting my time. There tends to be this kind of, if you don't you don't realize there's an end, we can just waste our time. We can just waste our life. So you don't feel it, but you have to, it gives a meaning to your life. So you have to contemplate a little bit. You have to put a little bit of effort, and once in a while remind yourself, me too, I'm going to die. And it might not happen that you live until 86 and then you die, you fall asleep and don't wake up. Look, you can die today. How am I spending my days and nights? Am I being a good person? All of those things, if we don't have death and we don't have the death contemplation, you can just end up spending a lot of time without ever having to stop and having any of these contemplations. You think we have infinite time, but we don't. So it gives a lot of meaning to life, and it gives sort of like a bit of an impetus, and it gives a good reason to practice. I mean, meditation, someone's like, oh, well, we meditate, and I was like, I just want to watch TV. Well, look, you can watch TV until your deathbed, and you haven't learned that much. The same thing with why do we practice metta? It's because this is the only thing which follows up, really. That becomes sort of like that becomes your karma. That will follow those kind of good mind states from life to life. Learning theoretical knowledge. It's almost like you drink that cup of forgetfulness when you die, that you have to leave that behind. And that the kindness will follow from life to life. But sure, maybe you don't get the feeling, but one thing we do sometimes, luckily for monks, we see dead people quite often. So we see these people in coffins, and we actually, if it's an open casket, we touch them, and you realize that, yeah, it's just a piece of meat. Once the mind has left, there's nothing left. But maybe you don't have the ability to see dead people that often. But
actually, just to say on that particular point, when I was in my city back in India, so I explicitly went to the cremation ground 2 or 3 times to see how a dead body is burnt in a way, because in my Hindu religion, we burn the dead bodies. So I've gone there 2 or 3 days, I think, not telling anybody in my family, because people will be quite weary about me, that my mental state is okay or not, something like that.
Hanging out there in a burning
out there, going around maybe, I think, 10 in the morning and returning around 3 or 4. And that too in the summer when it's May or June there and it's very hot, and you can imagine when the funeral pyres are burning across you and it's a hot day, how much heat it will be in a way. And one day when I returned in the evening to my house, my mother said, "You are all blackish. Where the hell were you right now? Am I expecting a police call now somewhere?" So I said, "No, you don't expect a police call coming to you." But I was just hanging out around somebody. So I have seen the complete people bringing the dead bodies until everything is turned into ashes. I have seen that thing, but still doesn't register that I'm going to die. So
well, look, like everything, and I've told you same about the metta. It's a practice where you have to keep at it. Something might click one day and then it might not be there. But all of these contemplations, same with how to remove resentment. It's not that you hear me saying it and all of a sudden you don't have to put any effort. You have to have the effort, but at the same time, all of these things leave a seed. Once in a while, something comes to your mind, and you have this seed from this sutta, and you remember, well, I should just concentrate on the low goodness of that person. So it stays in your mind, and that's why we need to come and listen to the teachings all the time. We need to continually doing this. There is no, I don't have a silver bullet, but yeah, thanks for the question. Let's give to the microphone to others as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ajahn.
Thanks for the question.
Shall I come?
Let's have chocolate chai.
Yes. With respect to suttas,
Sorry.
with respect to the two suttas,
Yeah.
It's beautiful to look at how Buddha dealt with this and how Venerable Sariputta dealt with the same problem.
Yeah.
Buddha was referring to the two people involved in this issue, the person who is causing problems and the person who is responding to that, how the resentment comes. So Buddha is referring to the person who has developed resentment towards another person. So Buddha says, okay, deal with this person by metta, karuna, upeka,
Yeah.
and that is Brahma Viharas, and if not, move away from that source.
Yeah.
And if you continue to have these problems with this person, you are the one who is creating conditions that will lead to trouble later on for you.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's what Buddha said.
it becomes your karma.
It's
then.
your karma. So
Yeah.
that's how Buddha was referring to the person who is having resentment towards the other person.
Yeah.
Venerable Sariputta dealt differently. He was referring to the qualities of the source of resentment.
Right.
Bad speech, bad action, or he doesn't warm to you and he doesn't talk sense to you. Those are the three things. So he says that, okay, he may be good, bad in this, but good in that, so concentrate on the good qualities of one of the three. That is speech, action, or he doesn't connect and talk sense. So three things. So he says, okay, if one of those things are
lacking,
good,
concentrate on the goodness.
that.
Yeah.
So you reduce your resentment.
Yeah.
Then he said, if everything is bad, all three areas are bad, at least think that next birth he will be a better person, so don't have resentment. Then he says that the last two, he says, if you find a person with all three areas are fantastic, a pure person, that is good for you, that will be good for you to associate. So how both Venerable Sariputta discussed the same thing, and how Buddha dealt the same problem in a very different way.
Sure, yeah.
It's very interesting because...
It is very interesting. That's why I took both of the suttas. Yeah. Like I said, quite often it's the second one, now 162, which has been said.
Yeah.
But in the Buddha's case, but the Buddha actually did say that it's the other person's karma. But okay, fair enough, like you said. It's also your karma. If you have resentment in your heart,
you pay a price. You pay a price.
You pay your price. So you have to, remember that yourself as well.
Yes.
Now that I have resentment, this is my mind, and then it affects your body, speech. Affects that your karma becomes impure. Yeah.
It's interesting how
it is very interesting.
Two great minds discuss the same problem, and we can learn from that.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, that is true. Thanks.
Yeah, Ajahn, we've got one online question here. Is how do you balance the compassion of the 5 points from the sutta with the truth? Do you tell people what you don't like about them to be truthful and honest?
Well, good luck with that one. No, I don't. No, it doesn't say that in the sutta. Look, and whether it's case to case. If it's a good friend of yours, you try to help them perhaps, but realistically, we are trying to help ourselves. We do the work for ourselves. We own our own karma. We are how to get rid of resentment, meaning for yourself. It's difficult enough to change ourselves. To change others, good luck with that. So look, you see the resentment in your own heart, and you try to get rid of the resentment in your own heart. You don't go changing others, or like, yes, I've heard this sutta, and this is what you should be doing. Go and teach metta to a person you really hate. No, so look, we're changing ourselves. Be an island to yourself. Do the practice yourself. That's what the Buddha said. And I think that's my final answer, and that's the end of this morning's sutta class. Okay, one more from Liv. Quick one from Liv. James, you have to ask me personally.
No, this is grandmother who you have to be nice to because she had her hand up ages ago. Anyway, question: how much do we need to examine ourselves when we meditate and we see resentment, which I can certainly see sometimes, and I had a bit of a struggle then, to be perfectly honest. Is it useful to actually be able to point to what's causing that? What I'm really meaning is there'll be a situation and the next morning or even immediately I might feel some resentment. Yeah. Now, how helpful is it to really work out why, because it's not that hard, why I feel that resentment? It's my vanity, or it's that person is doing such and such.
How helpful it is.
Yeah,
what I think is almost automatic. Like I said, quite often you see your own mind the pettiness in your... Sorry, did I disrupt your question? Did you want to...
No, that's the question.
Yeah, sorry. So I was like, I'm speaking over you. I'm sorry if I do that, by the way. So it's quite often, like I said, I can see my own mind, the pettiness in my own mind. And then, I can see the resentment. And these are just ways and means of, you can try to concentrate on the goodness of other person so you can remove that resentment in your own heart. But for that question you ask, these things, it's good to have different kind of almost like tools in your reservoir. How useful they are depends on the situation and the time, and you're like, okay, I see the cause. I always get triggered because of this. That's your button. Somebody, and they tend to, and some good people are good at finding your buttons. Definitely probably your husband. But no, I'm just talking. Yeah, no, he's very good. So what I'm saying that, it's good to know your buttons and work on them. It's like, I always do that. This little thing triggers me. And, and have kindness towards that, what happens from that always happens from that. And then you see that you're walking towards that, I'm going to do this again. And you can start pulling yourself back. That's the mindfulness of wisdom comes hand in hand in life. That if I'm walking towards the cesspool of my being, I'm going to get triggered again, and this is what's going to happen, and then I'm going to behave this way, and then I have to have the resentment in my heart towards that person. So let's not get that far. Let's try to stop earlier and earlier. And if you see that happening in your mind, you're outside, why don't you do body contemplation, body awareness? You're in your mind, it's like, oh, it's so difficult. Just think of what it feels in your body. Just remove yourself almost physically from that kind of way of thinking into physical body of yours. And it's like, how do I feel in my body? Yeah, it's tight. Well, relax your body a little bit. And that gives you a little bit of distance, almost physically, into that. And then you see, oh, poor me, I was doing that again. So there's active things like you can do for those things, and we have to keep at it. We have to keep at it. Yeah. So it's a good question. Yeah. Do you have, James? Did you have a very short one?
Yes, I think you partially answered it already. It's just from the point of view of practical application of develop love for a person, develop compassion for a person, develop equanimity for a person. Those are telling you what to do, but what are the practical things that you can do?
Okay. What are the practical things you can do?
Actions to take to develop the love, the compassion.
What's the practical and actions to do to develop compassion, metta, upekkha, karuna? So all of those, what are the practical applications? How do you actually contemplate, do those things? How do you do metta? Well, is that a short answer would be, like I said, you see the resentment arising in your mind, and you see yourself concentrating on that other person. Well, you have to develop the you have to develop these feelings beforehand. When you're in that resentment, it's almost too late. Then you can only thing you can do is remove yourself from the situation if it's happening there. But these Brahma Viharas, you have to keep at it. You have to learn to have enough loving kindness towards yourself, and then you learn how to use it for these situations. If it's not strong enough in your own mind outside of that situation, then you're too late. It's too late. So practically, yes, do it. Learn how to do it before. Keep at it. Have body awareness. It becomes maybe too strong in that sense. Body awareness, bring your awareness into your body, actually physically, you feel how you feel in your body. You have a bit of a clarity of your heart at that point because you're not too much in your head. Then you have a bit of an openness of the heart. Then because you have openness in your heart, then you have, I should be having more compassion towards this person. If you don't physically have a bit of a distance to the situation, you don't have openness in your heart yourself, you cannot add something into that space. The space is already filled with resentment, with anger. So we created this kind of spaces where we can add the metta. And that's why body awareness is quite good. It brings you away from your head a little bit. So that's sort of that kind of active doing things. We tend to be very petty in our own minds. So we try to calm down from those ivory towers sometimes a little bit. Humbleness is a good thing to develop as well. Have humbleness. You think you know, and you're the righteous one, and I'm right in this situation. Be a bit of a humble. Maybe you're not. We're all trying our best. That's it. Now that's the end. And now we're going for the dana. It was beautiful to see everybody. It's beautiful suttas. Retreat center is getting built. I just wanted to mention that walls are coming up. We have a retreat center coming. Hopefully, come in once in a while, see us in Newbury. There's a couple more fundraisings coming. Hopefully we get enough funds towards the end of the Vasa starting soon. So there will be 5 monks in Newbury, 4 nuns, retreat center coming, community is going well. I don't know what else to say. Thank you so much. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantang Abhivadem Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namassami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami